I'm Rachael Cox for 2AG TV. We are on the field of the Battle of New Orleans. Let's take a little trip along with General Jackson down the mighty Mississippi. The Battle of New Orleans took place on January 8, 1815. Until the Civil War, Americans celebrated the date as the Glorious 8th.
The Battle of New Orleans, that many people remember from the famous song about taking a little bacon and taking a little beans and meeting the British in the town of New Orleans, actually was the continuation of a series of engagements. These all took place south of the main city of New Orleans, down around Chalmette, Louisiana, which is a few miles south of New Orleans. And these battles took place in the swamps and along the Mississippi River and along a series of plantations which were south of the main city itself.
The British planned to strike at first light, hurling thousands of troops in multiple columns against Andrew Jackson's fortified line. Another column of redcoats would cross the Mississippi River and strike unfinished American fortifications there. They were to capture U.S. Cannon Battery and turn its guns to fire on Jackson's army. Things went wrong from the start, and the British attack was hours late in launching. Still, fog from the river and the smoke of cannon fire shrouded the infantry as it advanced across open ground.
The attack did not take place until the columns were discernible from the enemy's line at more than 200 yards distance. As they advanced, a continued and most galling fire was opened from every part of their line, and from the battery on the right bank. Major General John Lambert, commanding. January 10, 1815.
Behind the American lines, mostly made of earth, not cotton bales, Major General Andrew Jackson watched as the British uniforms, not all red, became visible in the fog.
The uniform is green as an early form of camouflage, and we took it from the German Jaegers, the hunters. They had rifled barrels and green uniforms, so it made sense to put us out in front of the redcoats, skirmish with the enemy, and hide what the intentions are of our main army.
Jackson's infantry now opened fire. Despite the legend about Kentucky long rifles and squirrel guns, most of his men were armed with smooth-bore muskets.
In my encampment, everything was ready for action when early on the morning of the 8th, the enemy, after throwing a heavy shower of bombs and Congreve rockets, advanced their columns on my right and left to storm my entrenchments. I cannot speak sufficiently in praise of the firmness and deliberation with which my whole line received their approach. More could not have been expected from veteran troops inured to war. Andrew Jackson to James Monroe, January 9, 1815.
The American Army was made up of men from all walks of life. There were regular U.S. Army troops, U.S. Navy sailors, a battalion of free men of color from New Orleans, frontier volunteers, state and territorial militia, Choctaw Indians, volunteers from the shops and streets of the city, and yes, Lafitte pirates and privateers.
As one of your men had said, that there's a love-hate relationship with Andrew Jackson in New Orleans today. There was a love-hate relationship with him 200 years ago as well. But I think he was probably the only American officer by the sheer personality and will who could have pulled this off. I know many people have said if you took him and put him up on the Canadian frontier and one of the generals from the Canadian frontier down here, they both would have failed. Not that things were tremendously successful on the Canadian frontier, but where they were successful, had Jackson tried to do up there what he did down here, it would not have worked. But it worked here because they assembled such a disparate group of people from so many different walks of life. Free blacks, there were slaves that were involved, there were
Indians,
sailors, there were Indians, there were the Baratarians, regular troops, militias, free men of color. Yeah, you had so many here, and Jackson was able to get all of them to put aside their differences for the greater good and win the day.
They unleashed a storm of musket and artillery fire as the British surged forward. their commanding general with them.
The brave commander of the forces, who never in his life could refrain from being at the post of honor and sharing the danger to which the troops were exposed, galloped onto the front to animate them by his presence, and he was seen, with his hat off, encouraging them on the crest of the glacis. It was there, almost at the same time, he received 2 wounds, one in the knee, and another, which was almost instantly fatal, in his body. Major General John Lambert, commanding. January 10, 1815.
The British struck the American fortifications in 2 places. On the west, near the river, where they stormed an advance work, but could not break through into the main line, and to the east, closer to a swamp, where they never stood a chance.
For an hour, the fire of small arms was as incessant and severe as can be imagined. The artillery, too, directed by officers who displayed equal skill and courage, did great execution. Yet the columns of the enemy continued to advance with a firmness which reflects upon them the greatest credit. Andrew Jackson to James Monroe, January 9, 1815.
The British were mowed down in unbelievable numbers, but they continued to fight with desperation and courage. Many American officers later praised their determination. After multiple attacks, though, Major General John Lambert realized that he could ask nothing more from the men.
In this situation, finding that no impression had been made, that though many men had reached the ditch, and were either drowned or obliged to surrender, and that it was impossible to restore order in the regiments where they were, I placed the reserve in position, until I could obtain such information as to determine me how to act to the best of my judgment, and whether or not I should resume the attack. Major General John Lambert, commanding. January 10, 1815.
Things went better for the British on the west bank of the Mississippi. That column stormed an unfinished American line and captured a battery. But the success was too late to change the battle's outcome. The British commander waited until nightfall and then withdrew his bloodied army back to its pre-attack position. The difference in the casualties between the 2 armies was shocking. Jackson's army lost a total of 13 men killed, 39 wounded, and 19 missing or captured, a total of 71. The British reported 291 dead, 1,262 wounded, and 484 captured, a total of 2,037. The battle site is preserved today at Chalmette Battlefield, a unit of Jean Lafitte National Historical Park, located in Chalmette, Louisiana, just south of New Orleans. The park can be visited by car or on a scenic paddle wheel riverboat ride aboard the Creole Queen, which departs from the French Quarter in New Orleans. To learn more about the War of 1812 on the Gulf Coast, visit our website at twoegtv.com. In Chalmette, Louisiana, I'm Rachael Cox, 2EG TV.